Hi everyone, in this video we are going to learn about Spring Hateoas. Hateoas stands for Hypertext as the engine of application state. We know what is hypertext. Hypertext are links, whereas application state is response data that is being sent from the server to the client. So using Spring Hateoas, what we do is we are adding links to our response data and sending it from the server to the client. Now you might ask, what is the benefit of adding links to our response data? How is client going to benefit with that? So there are many benefits, in which the important ones are that the client can have a single entry point to the RESTful web service application, and all the further actions at the client side can be taken based on the links in the response data. So what it means is the client has, the client can have multiple actions like add, edit, delete, or it can also have hyperlinks. So all these actions, what they do is actually they invoke a method at the server side, right? By using some endpoint URL. So somehow the client needs to remember this endpoint URLs by hard coding it at the client side or by building up the URL. Using Spring Hateoas, now the client no more needs to remember this, that is the links. As the links are now sent as part of response data, the client can directly make use of those links to perform some actions. Okay. The other advantage is it reduces the dependency between client and server. So that the server can make changes to its URI without breaking the client-side code. These are the few advantages of using Spring Hateoas. Okay. So looking at the implementation side, there are three main APIs that we can use to add links to our response data. We can use a representation model that actually is used to add links to the response data. Then we have link, and this can be used to create the endpoint URL, that is the path. And then we have web MVC link builder. This is a builder class which is used to create the link object. Okay, so let's jump on to our IDE and implement Spring Hateoas in our RESTful web service application. So the first step, what we need to do is we need to add the Spring Hateoas dependency to our application. For that, right click on the application, click on Spring, edit starters, and here search for Hateoas and click OK. And you can see that a dependency of Spring Boot Starter Hateoas is added in a pom.xml file. So next step is in our DTO class here, what we do is we extend this with our representation model. Okay. And let's add the generic type of flight DTO here. So what this does is, if you look at the implementation of representation model, it has methods like add, which is used to add the link to our flight DTO class, that is our response data. So the next step is in our controller class. What we're going to do is, let's start with our get flight method. So here what we're going to do is we're going to create the link and then add that link to our flight DTO response. Okay. So first thing is create the link, and we have this in our Spring Hateoas package. And then we're going to use the web MVC link builder class. And on this, I'm going to invoke the static method that is link true. And I'm going to create this link on flight controller class. And then I'm going to invoke the self relation. So this is going to create the link. Okay. So with this, next what we're going to do is we're going to extract the flight DTO object here, and then add the link to this DTO, because these are coming from our representation model in our flight DTO. So let's add that link, and then finally return that response. Now it is a recommended practice that instead of sending back our flight DTO as is, what we do is we wrap this up with our an entity model that is from the Hateoas package. Like we have entity model coming from the Spring Hateoas. Okay, so what we are doing is we are just wrapping it up, and then the same thing what we do here, entity model. Okay, so this is how we create the link. So what we did, we just added the representation model here. Okay, next what we did is we created the link and then added that link to our response data. Okay, so let's start the server and see how we can see this response, that is the link in our response data when we access it through our Postman. Okay, the server is up, so let's open our Postman, and here what we're going to do is we're going to invoke the get flight method. Let's use this and click on send, and now you can see that we have the data along with the link, but there is one thing that is missing, that is we don't have the okay, so just went back over here. Yeah, here you can see that we don't have the path, right, and the data. So we are missing the link, the part of the link in our href here. So what we are missing here is, instead of we creating link on the class that is flight controller, what we do is we're going to use another static method, because we have the path over here, right? We are going to make use of this. So for that we need to make use of method on, and I'm now going to invoke this on the flight controller class, and on this class I'm invoking the get flight method, that is this, and then passing the flight ID as an argument, because that is what we are getting for this, right? This method, that is what we are passing. So what it does is internally it makes a fake invocation call to the get flight method on flight controller class, okay, to build the endpoint, that is the link. Fine, so let's save this and go back to our Postman and try to resubmit and see what we see in the response. So if we click on send, and now you can see that we have the correct URL. Okay, so now for the client, they don't need to hard code this URL. They can make use of this link and then fetch the data for this flight. Okay, so let's go back here again to our controller and try to implement the same for, in case if we have a list of records. For this, we just use the same steps. First, fetch this or extract this to a list variable here. And then I'm going to iterate over this. And here I'm going to use the same step, that is here, copy this, and here instead of get flight, I'm going to use get all flights. Okay, sorry, for this it's going to be flight DTO, right? So it's going to be the same method here, because we are not invoking that. It's going to be flight, but here is going to be DTO.get ID. Okay, next we have to add this to our DTO. Perfect. So what we did, we have iterated over all the flight DTOs and created the link and added that link back to the DTO. So next Here what we are going to do is, now instead of list we have something called collection entity, sorry, we have collection model. Okay, and same thing we do here, dot, and we have something called off. Okay, and this what we are going to send back, that is the list. Okay, so what we did, we just iterated, or we extracted our list of flight details from our service class, and then we iterated over the list and then created the link for each record. Okay, and you can see here we are invoking the get flight. Okay, this method here, the link for each record should be this, right? So that's what we did, and then added it back to the DTO and then passed it as a collection model. Okay, so let's go back to our Postman, and here this is the URL for our get all flights. We click on send, and you can see that we get all the list of flight DTOs records with the links, right? So you can see that how the client can make use of these links, right? So just copy this, and if you try to put it over here and click on send, you can see that you'll get the response for that particular flight. So this is how, you know, the client can make use of this URL when there are list of flight returned as a response. So one thing that we are missing though here is, okay, if you go back here to our all flight response, we don't have the self response for get all flights. Let's add that. So here we are going to make use of the same thing here, create the link, and this time it's going to be get all flights, and it has no argument, and this link I'm going to send as the collection model, that is our response. If I save this, if I go back to Postman, and if I send it again, and you can see that we have a self link for get all flights method, that is this, right? That is how we added, we can add self relation or self link for the get all flights. Okay, one thing that we can improve here is, instead of having this is a static in methods, right? The link to and method on. So here we can import all the static methods and remove this. No, we don't need this. This way we can make it look little better. Okay, so that is how we can make use of Spring Hateoas and add links to all our response, and that is how you can also do the same for create flight. So in create flight, what we do is, after you create the flight DTO, you can make use of the same link here what we have for the get. So if the client side, if the client creates a record, then the next time if the client wants to access that record, it can make use of the link within that method, that is, sorry, within that response that is in the flight DTO, right? So I hope that is clear, and now you are familiar with Spring Hateoas. So this was just a basic on Spring Hateoas.